to the need for better planning and improved urban infrastructure, the need for more investment, better transparency and higher standards in education, the need to better address environmental, climate change and water issues, policies to manage population ageing, and the need to tackle intergenerational poverty and welfare dependency. The public is basically on side when it comes to these challenges. This is critically important because the first step in reform is the recognition that the existing system and current policies aren't working. This brings me to my fourth point. I think there is, in the policy community itself, wide agreement on what actually needs to be done in many of these areas. Ken Henry's enunciation of the 3 Ps, population, participation and productivity, a decade ago, has been important in this process. The role of the Treasury, the Reserve Bank and the Productivity Commission is critical. Their function in pushing ideas and wider frameworks for reform is, I think, indispensable. It might take 5, 10 or 15 years before the ideas turn into breakthrough policy, but hey, that's just par for the course. The campaign for lower tariffs was waged for 20 years inside the policy community before the breakthrough came. The process at work here is the pressure builds up, you think you're going nowhere, but eventually the dam wall breaks. The role of independent inquiries of high intellectual standing I also believe to be critical, such as the Henry Tax Review, recently released, or the Garneau report on climate change. I think the intellectual standing of documents like this is enormous, and their capacity to have a beneficial impact on the public policy debate for years, influencing the politicians and the media, is critical. Fifth, much of the current and emerging reform agenda is about overlapping Commonwealth state responsibilities. Paul Keating said to me at one stage last year, much of our future productivity gains will rest upon state government performance. So we need to think about that. In fact, we need to think a lot more deeply about it. How do we address that? How do we fix the federation? How do we provide more incentives for productivity-enhancing state government policies? And how do we get better synergies between the Commonwealth and the states to tackle these overlapping issues? And I might say as a footnote there that there's also part of the agenda that still rests with the Commonwealth: tax reform off the back of the Henry Review, retirement income policy, superannuation policy. There's a substantive agenda there for the Commonwealth Government. Well, next point, let's remember what we've actually learnt about reform in the past generation, because few countries have done as well as Australia over the previous generation. What have we learnt? We've learnt that the reform must be intellectually sound, that we must be confident of the intellectual integrity of the reform policy that we're going to commit to. That means the solutions must have been debated and canvassed at length for some time among policymakers in the political system and in the media. Consultation and dialogue with stakeholders is vital. Consensus is not easily won. Consensus cannot always be achieved. Nobody asks a government to commit political suicide, but reform demands leadership, courage, communication, and willingness to risk a government. You can't do everything at once. Getting the reform priorities right is critical. Hawke did this well, Rudd did it badly. Winning the intellectual and ideas debate in the media is vital. Getting the academy re-involved has a role. Too much academic work is about research divorced from public policy. We need to get the wheels better attuned between the academy and public policy. We need also to beware in the modern age of creating new laws and regulations to solve every social problem. The pressures are such that people look to government and demand new government solutions and new regulations to solve virtually every problem. Well, the fact of the matter is people have got to solve some of their own problems. They've got to look more to themselves. It's vital to keep our economies and our systems flexible and responsive. We need to beware always of false choices. The debate about false choices, whether it's the environmental, economic trade-off or whatever. Efficient government and effective markets go together. Efficient government and effective markets go together. Sound economic policy and a decent society go together. Morality is not a government monopoly. Markets also have their own morality. And finally, we need a better talent, more talent in politics. I believe there's no substitute for leadership, and leadership cannot be programmed, but it comes best from a wide pool of talent. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Bring the mics up in the front, Debbie. Can we get the mic up in the front there? We're doing very well with Paul. I think he's got a cold.
Hi. One of the things that we were talking about in the panel discussion just before this session was the hard time that public servants get and the way that the community as a whole tends to put the public service down. And it seems to me that that flies in the face of a lot of what I see, which is a lot of work to develop the public service, to make it stronger. And I think ANZOG is right at the forefront of that whole development of making a stronger public service. But what we seem to be seeing now is a very weak, whilst we've got a strong public service, our political parties are particularly weak. So, you know, you have public servants who will step into a minister's office and you take the business from the public service into the ministerial office and you're taking it into the political realm. And my concern is whilst we're doing a whole lot to strengthen the public service, the political organisations seem to be inherently weak. And I just wonder whether part of the malaise that, or the shying away from reform might be connected with perhaps a falling away in the strength of political parties and a lack of ability for political parties to develop and improve and become stronger in the same way that we're trying to make the public sector stronger.
Well, I agree with the thrust of the question, and it's implicit in some of the points that I made. I think the political parties are hollowing out and they're losing a lot of their reform conviction. You know, I mean, the Prime Minister said a fortnight ago when she said that she wouldn't be proceeding with the ETS, that there had to be a community consensus, like there was with Medibank and Medicare. Now, this is nonsense. This is just complete nonsense. I mean, having covered this, I know exactly what happened. The Whitlam government sponsored Medibank against a hostile Senate, a virulent campaign more intense than the campaign these days against the ETS, It went to a double dissolution election in May 1974, won the election, put the bills back to the Senate, had them thwarted again, called a joint sitting, put them through, saw the Fraser government modify the scheme and the Hawke government then finally entrench it. Now, that's what you have to do to get up policy reforms. It's no good saying, oh, look, it's a bit difficult, and, you know, there's a bit of a problem with community consensus. You know, I mean, that's not how a party of conviction that's dedicated to reform behaves. Now, I don't want to be too tough on her, but I think those comments are fair. I recognise, and I won't go into all the associated problems, but this goes to the question of political parties. You mentioned the public service. I'd like to see ministers, and some of them are, but some aren't, more supportive of their public servants. And in Canberra, a couple of departments have been run down very badly. That shouldn't have happened. That shouldn't have happened. And ministers that really are committed to a quality public service wouldn't have let that happen. The Australian public will always complain about public servants. They always have. When I, in my earlier and brief career, joined the public service in 1969, some of my colleagues mocked me for, deciding to become a public servant, a brief career that I enjoyed very much. So Australians will always grumble about that. But it's important for the politicians to honour the public service and honour the professionalism of the public service. Your final point about often things going pear-shaped when they get into the minister's office, yes, well, that's one of the problems of modern politics.